Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming to the webinar tonight. This webinar is part 4 of our accreditation series. Thank you for taking the time to join us this evening, especially with it being just the night before Halloween. I'm sure you have lots of preparations you are getting ready for your next day. So thank you for taking the time to come tonight. Before we get started, if you could just comment in the question box your name and where you're from, I would appreciate it, just so I can make sure that everyone can hear me and see the screen okay. And then also for those who are attending a webinar with NAFCC for the first time, my name is Marissa Gallegos. I am a coordinator here at NAFCC, and you are welcome to ask questions at any point during the webinar. You will just need to write your questions in the question box, and they will pop up on my screen, and I will answer them as promptly as I can. Alrighty, it looks like we have quite a few providers starting to trickle in, so I'll just give one more minute to make sure that everyone can hear me, that enough people are coming in. It looks like we have, let's see, we have Wisconsin, we have Pennsylvania, New York, Chicago, Minnesota. Looks like we've got a good mix of providers here tonight from all over the US. So thank you again for coming tonight. Because it is a night before Halloween and I'm sure you've got lots to do tonight, I want to go ahead and get started. And then just like as I mentioned before, if you have any questions during the webinar, please feel free to write your questions in the question box and I will answer them. Alrighty, our goal for tonight is to go step by step through the NAFCC update. I would like to first start with a brief review of the whole accreditation process so you can see where the update lies in this process and how it can help you along your accreditation path. At this point in your accreditation journey, you have already evaluated yourself in your program through self-study using the quality standards for NAFCC accreditation, made quality improvements, and gathered required application documentation. Then you would have submitted your application, had your observation visit, and have received your accreditation award. Now you're accredited for a 3-year period and you're working on maintaining your high quality program. The update offers a way for you as an accredited provider to update NAFCC about your programs during your accreditation period. As part of the update, you will regularly assess yourselves and your programs to ensure continuous compliance with the quality standards for NAFCC accreditation. You will also be verifying that you continue to meet all of the eligibility requirements. In addition, providers will report to their professional you'll report your professional development activities and the quality improvements that you've completed during the year as you fill out the update. Updates are equivalent to self-study enrollment when accredited providers apply for reaccreditation before their current accreditation expires. So basically what that means is in order to become reaccredited, I have a lot of providers ask me if they need to do self-study again, but they do not. You would just do an update and that would be similar as if you were to be doing self-study, just a mini version of it where you update us about the quality standards that you're currently working on. Alrighty, so a lot of providers ask me, why do we do an update? Why is it necessary? As I mentioned in the previous slide, updates offer a way for accredited providers to regularly assess themselves and their programs to ensure continuous compliance with the quality standards for NAFCC accreditation and to verify that they continue to meet all of the eligibility requirements. We have the regular updates in place because a lot can happen in your program during the 3 years you're accredited, and we want to keep tabs with you to know what you're up to know that you're still thinking about quality standards, that you're still thinking about your professionalism, that you still are thinking about your accreditation, and that it's not just paperwork that you did to become accredited, but that you are continuously thinking about your accreditation and thinking about keeping your program at a high quality standard. Just like I said, it's our kind of way of checking in with you and seeing if there's anything you need from us, and seeing if, just as a chance for you to reflect over your program. Like I mentioned before as well, accreditation is valid for 3 years, and so the update is required to maintain that 3-year status. If you fail to submit an update, it will result in your accreditation becoming invalid. Because of this, it's extremely important to understand due dates and how to prepare for the update. Okay, so the annual update process actually begins the second you receive your accreditation award in the mail. When you are awarded accreditation, you will receive a certificate and a letter. Often providers are so excited about the certificate, they lose track of the letter, but please, please, please keep track of this letter and put it in a safe location, and of course read it. I know it's really exciting after you put in all that hard work to get your certificate, that you see a certificate and you want to go show your family and you get excited, but this letter is very important. It has really good information, such as how long your certificate is valid for and when you will need to submit your update in order to keep your accreditation valid. So the first step, the second you receive your certificate, is look for this letter and put it in a safe place. Step 2 of that is in that same packet you'll receive along with your letter and your award, you will receive what is called an eligibility documentation checklist. It outlines each document that you have submitted to us for your application and the date that it expires. So this is important because once it's time to fill out your update, you can pull this out and you can see all of the documents that you'll need to submit for each person in your program, and then see if the expiration date is valid or if it's expired. And if it's expired, then you'll know that you need to submit that particular thing. So if we were to use this eligibility document checklist as an example, when Alicia Platt, the provider, reads this and she sees that health assessment, TB screening, CPR, and first aid are blank, she'll know that she definitely needs to submit those, right? And then her state and federal background checks, it says 7/2019, so they would have expired. So she would need to turn in all of those documents, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. Karen is asking questions. She says, so on July 18th would be your training. Let's see. Oh, when you want to figure out your training. Okay, we'll talk about that a little bit once we get to the part about training, but just to answer your question, let's say that you received, so yes, here on this document checklist, you will see, let me get my little pen here. You see that this was the date she received her award, July 18th, 2019. So for your training, you can do starting at this date and then forward 18 months. Because that's when your update will be due, is in another 18 months. So anything from this date onward, you can go ahead and use until you hit your reaccreditation. So hopefully that makes sense. We use that date because we can't use anything from the past because you've already used that in your previous application. Oh my word. That's supposed to say app. Okay. So anything before that date, you've already submitted for your current accreditation that you just received your certificate for. So we can't accept before that, but anything after that. So really the very last day we could accept it would be July 18th, 2022, because that would be 3 years, and 3 years is when your accreditation expires. Let me erase my doodles. Okay, the third step, same day when you receive your award, is to go ahead and mark on your calendar what your due date is. So if we go back here to this document checklist, it'll show both on this letter when your date is. Let's see, so like right here it says you'll need to submit the update 18 months after you become accredited. Also on here, it would show you like an actual date when you would need to submit it in. So on your calendar, once you receive those dates, you want to go ahead and put it on your calendar because 18 months sounds like a long time, but it comes really fast. So you want to make sure to mark it on your calendar so you don't forget and it doesn't sneak up on you. NAFCC will usually provide a reminder, whether by call, by email, or by a postcard, but just in case those reminders aren't received, you want to make sure that you have it marked on your calendar. Mailmen lose mail, emails, sometimes things go to junk mail. So you always want to make sure that you're responsible for your due dates. And then of course, if at any time you receive this letter or you have received this letter and you've misplaced it, or you receive the document checklist and you replaced it, or you just can't find it, you're always welcome to call NAFCC or email one of us, and we will give you a new list. So you have all your due dates that you can put on your calendar. Alrighty, are there any questions in regards to these first two steps once you receive your certificate that will help you be prepared for the update? So just a quick refresher: step 1, keep the letter. Step 2, keep the document checklist. Step 3, put it on the calendar. Alrighty, let's go ahead and talk about due dates. This is probably the most confusing part about the update, is just knowing when to turn it in. In 2017, NAFCC came out with a change to eliminate the annual updates and have just one update during your 3-year accreditation period. So the next 2 slides, I'm going to be showing you if you were accredited before 2018, what you'll need to do, and if you were accredited after 2018, what you'll need to do. So if you were accredited before 2018, you are to finish up this year with your 2nd annual update. For all other providers who were accredited during or after 2018, you're on the 18-month track. Because we may have providers in attendance, like I mentioned, that may be accredited before or after, we're going to go through both of those just so you understand. For those of you who are accredited before 2018, you have been used to submitting updates annually, meaning that your first update due is exactly 1 year after your accreditation was awarded, and then exactly 2 years after your accreditation was awarded. So in other words, your accreditation anniversary. So if we look at this up at the screen, you can see I've put an example. So let's say you received your accreditation December 1st of 2017. 1 year later, you would submit your first update, and then another year later, you would submit your 2nd update. And so this is, remember, just for accredited providers before 2018. There aren't a lot of providers anymore who are accredited before 2018. Most who are probably in attendance tonight have been accredited after 2018, and we'll go over that step in just a moment. But if you are on this accredited before 2018 track, you're probably getting ready to do your 2nd annual update, or you've already done so. Are there any questions for those accredited before 2018 on when they're supposed to submit their annual update? Okay, if you come up with them, you can feel free to ask. So for the rest of you who have been accredited after 2018, or I should say, you have become accredited after 2018, on 2018, or in the future, you have a new update timeline, and you only have to submit your update every 18 months, so at the halfway mark of your accreditation. You will not have to submit the annual update just at the halfway mark. So for example, if you were accredited January 1st of 2018, all you need to do, if you don't have your document checklist, is add 18 months to figure out what your update due date is, which would be June 1st, 2020. If you're bad at math or you're not sure, or you just want to double check and make sure, you can always check your document checklist and we'll always have the date for you, or you can call into NAFCC if you don't have that list, and we will be happy to let you know and get you a new list printed out. Are there any questions about due dates for accredited providers after 2018, or questions about how to calculate that if you don't have your list? Alrighty, so that's the hardest part. We've gotten through the hardest part, understanding when you're supposed to turn in this paperwork and how you can prepare for that date. So now let's dive into the actual update form and walk you through each page. To begin, you of course need an update form, which is available at nafcc.org. The form will outline what is needed, so reading the form alone will answer many of the questions you have about the update. So when it's actually time to complete yours and you are panicking the day you're writing it out because you can't remember anything from this webinar, go ahead and just read the form. The form, we've tried to rewrite it several times to make sure that it's extremely easy for you to read and make it as user-friendly as possible. So First, you will check on the box whether or not you are completing the second year update or an 18-month update. Just like I mentioned before, if you're not sure, check your document checklist or give us a call. So majority of you are probably going to be 18-month update, so you put a check. On this page, please update all of your contact information. A current email is important. NAFCC sends valuable information reminders via email as a courtesy, so we want to make sure that we have a good email for you. I have a lot of providers mention to me that they wish that NAFCC would contact more. We do try a lot to send out reminders and let you know what's going on in the field of family child care, but if you don't give us an updated email, then we can't help you with that. So make sure that that is up to date, as well as a phone number. Phone numbers are important and they change a lot, so make sure that you have updated both of those fields. This page is also where you certify that you continue to meet the standards and the eligibility requirements, and that you understand that accreditation can be revoked due to non-compliance or unethical behavior. So make sure that you read this and not just sign it without reading it, but make sure that you are really willing to agree to continue to meet the standards, to meet the requirements for eligibility, and that you're going to continue to be ethical in your program. So this page isn't too hard, just updating and signing that you are still wanting to be accredited. Page 2 outlines everything that you will need to submit to complete your update. If you submit an incomplete update, your processing time will be delayed and may result in additional fees and invalidation of accreditation. So before submitting your update, please make sure that every checkbox is marked. This is a page I recently redid to make sure that it is very clear what is to be expected. So if your checklist looks like this, you're not ready. You want to make sure that you have all of these checkboxes marked before you submit. If you do happen to miss something and we review your update, we'll of course let you know that something's missing and we'll give you the chance to give it to us, but it will make your process longer. So just try your very best to make sure that all of these are checked off, that you have all of these documents ready to go. The most often missed checkbox is the licensing reports and licensing complaints. If you do not provide a licensing report, even if there were no complaints or non-compliances found, your update may take a little bit longer to complete because we will have to go through your state's registries to find out whether or not there were any complaints or non-compliances. Most states have a registry that is easy for us to access, so that doesn't normally take a long time, but there are a few states where we have to reach out to individuals by phone or by email in order to get that information, and sometimes that does take quite a while. So please send us your most recent report and a copy of your child care license. So for any reason you do need to check in with your state, we have your license number and information that will make it easier for us to access that information. Are there any questions about this sheet? We're going to go step by step through all of these checkboxes, but are there any questions just about what this page is trying to teach you or trying to tell you? Oh, just another extra thing. If you have moved, down here you'll see this little truck. If you have moved and relocated since you have submitted your application, you will have to file a transfer workbook. We're not going to talk about that tonight. It's not very common that we have providers having to do that, but if you do have an address change, then you will need to, we'll probably reach out to you and say, hey, you need to fill out this transfer workbook, and it is a $50 fee. So just a FYI, if you need to move during your accreditation period, there is a transfer workbook that needs to be done. And if you don't know about that, then of course once you submit your update and you see that the address has changed, we would let you know. Okay, I have some questions coming in. I am licensed through the Air Force. Is the FCC coordinator, who is the FCC coordinator who can give me the licensing report? Leslie, yes, you should be able to talk to your mentor there at the Air Force, and they'll be able to give you your licensing report. Usually we don't have a hard time getting information from Air Force, Navy, Army. Any provider that comes from there, your licensing reports are usually crystal clear, and your mentor who sends in your paperwork is very thorough, and so we don't normally have issues with that with those types of providers. So if you're in Navy, Army, or Air Force, I wouldn't worry too much about that because they usually send all that information anyway, since your license is a little bit different than everybody else's. Okay. Oh, I think I skipped a slide. Oh no, we're good. Okay, so this page 3 is just going to refer to payment. Just make sure that you double check to see if there are any fees that you need to pay. So if your membership has expired, you want to pay a $45 membership renewal fee. The 18-month update is $160. If you happen to be doing your second update in these next 2 months, you won't have to pay an update fee since you paid for your first annual update. But most everyone who's listening to this you're working on your 18-month update, so you will need to pay the update fee of $160. If you submit your update late, there is a $50 late fee. Late meaning that you're submitting your update more than 30 days past your due date. If you don't submit the late fee, and we notice that it's late, we'll reach out to you and say, hey, before we can finish your update, you do have to pay this fee. But just make sure that's another reason why it's important to double check and make sure that you're submitting things on time. That way you don't have to pay extra fees. And then if you yourself are not paying and you have the Army, Navy, or Air Force paying, or maybe another agency paying, you can also mention there that they will be paying for you. And then if an agency is paying for you, you'll need to attach a authorization form. So that way we have permission, to go ahead and invoice them. But for most of you, you'll probably be paying on your own, so you can submit your credit card information, you can give us a call, or you can send a check to NAFCC. Any questions about payment for the update? Okay, so this is very, very important. If in the case you submit your update 1 to 60 days late, meaning after your update due date, you will have to pay a $50 late fee, as I've mentioned. If after 60 days we do not receive your update, your accreditation will be dropped. When you pay this fee, please note that it does not extend the life of your accreditation. You are simply paying for being tardy. We will still happily help you with your update, but if you end up placing yourself in this position, we consider you a provider in good standing, but you are technically not accredited until we complete your update. This is why it's extremely important for you to turn in your update on time or even early so that you do not risk losing your accreditation temporarily. I have many, many, many providers call into me stressed or angry because their state organizations do not want to pay them because their accreditation lapsed due to a tardy update. So please make sure to turn in your updates on time to avoid losing funds or enrollment in your program because your update was submitted late. I have a couple questions coming in. Karen asks, I see the third year of the observation isn't on page 3. Is this another packet? Oh, you don't see the fee on there? You might be looking at the application packet instead of the update packet. Those are two different packets. The way you can know is the very first page will say NAFCC Accreditation Update. The other one will say NAFCC Accreditation Application, and that one only needs to be filled out every 3 years when you re-accredit. This NAFCC Accreditation Update is for your halfway mark, the 18-month mark, or annually if you were accredited before 2018. Okay, hope that answered your question. So just as a refresher, if you're late and you pay a $50 fee, the $50 fee isn't to extend that accreditation, you're just paying because you were tardy. I just hope that makes sense. It's not because we want to be mean, it's not because we don't want to give you your accreditation, but it's just that was when your due date was, and you got to make sure that you submit your things on time or early so that way we have enough time to get it corrected or have it reviewed and then give you your seal, and that way you can be funded by your state or whoever funds you and you can maintain your accreditation. So I just mentioned this, we just mentioned this in the webinar because we do have a lot of providers who pay or who wait to submit their update thinking, oh, I can go ahead and just pay the late fee if I'm busy and my accreditation will be extended, and that's just not the case. So just wanted to make that clear and let you know so you don't get yourself in that sticky situation. Okay, page 4 is where you will mention any other adults that live in your home, substitutes, or assistants. If you're unsure about the definitions or roles of assistants or substitutes, you can read the descriptions below, or you can review quality standards 5.3 through 5.42. And those will give you a very good description of what a substitute is and what an assistant is. Are there any questions in regards to substitutes or assistants? Okay. Okay, on page 5, you will find the quality improvement report. This report and the next report we will talk about are the most important pieces of your update because it tells us how you've been working on the quality standards and your professionalism since you become accredited or reaccredited. This is also where I get the most resubmissions requested, so I do want to take some time to talk about this. In order to complete this update, you will need to select 3 quality standards that you've been working on since your accreditation was awarded, and 1, describe what actions you've taken to more fully meet those standards, and 2, describe how those actions have positively impacted your family child care program. This is another reason why it's really important to read your letter after you received your accreditation certificate, because we may have included a list of quality standards that were not met or not observed during your observation visit, and you can go ahead and use that list and work on some of those standards that were mentioned by your observer. If you happen to be perfect on your observation, you're awesome, good for you. This is still a chance for you to reflect and think about which ones you would like to make a plan to work on, or that you have made a plan to work on. You want to start working on improving these standards right away, not at the time you decide to fill out this form. I do go through and read all of these, and it is very obvious when someone has taken the time to really work on the standards over the period of their 18 months, as opposed to someone who just picked 3 random standards at the time they decided to fill out this form. So I wanted to write out some tips to help you write a great quality improvement report. First of all, you want to be specific in writing what you chose as your standard and what you did. Secondly, explain what you did to meet that standard, explain what you will continue to do to meet that standard, and explain how you have seen your program or specific individuals be positively impacted by your efforts. Basically, we just want to write enough down so we can see what you've done. So for example, if you have a standard that says, there's a relationship standard that talks about helping children in stressful situations or helping them cope with their emotions. If you were to put that standard down in the report, if you just say, I talked to the child and make them feel better, that's only one sentence. You didn't describe what you do on a continual basis or how you improve that standard, where you were before and where you are now. And so it'd be very hard for me to be able to accept that quality improvement report. So you might want to say something like, well, this used to be a hard standard for me to meet because I just don't know a lot about children's emotions, so I decided to read a book. That book helped me to know how to read better child's emotions and how to talk them through or how to redirect. And now that I'm doing that, I see that my children are happier. So that would be an example of something to write. So that ends up being about 3 or 4 sentences worth. So just make sure that you're writing a good report, just a paragraph each, couple sentences, so we understand and we can see what you've been working on. And it's really fun for me to be able to read these and to see what you've been working on and what accomplishments you've had in your program. So please do take pride in this report when you write it. So just one final warning, if you write only 1 sentence for each standard that you report, I will ask you to redo your report. I really do enjoy reading about what's going on in your programs, and the other NAFCC coordinators also enjoy reading these reports. So please take your time and and write a good report about what you've been doing in your program. Also, this is a good time to, once you get your award letter, if you do see that there's quality standards that were not met or that weren't observed, to go ahead and write those down and start working on them right then and there. Start practicing them over the next year, over the next 18 months. So then when you get to this report, you know what to write. And that you don't pull out this report and say, oh, dang it, I forgot, I should be working on these standards. Let me just pick 3 from the book and write whatever I want. It's really obvious when providers do that. So please, like I said, take pride and take your time and select the standards that you're going to be working on months ahead of time, and not just the day you start and decide to work on this report. Page 6 is where you will find the professional development report. It is very similar to the quality improvement report, but instead of talking about quality standards, you will talk about 2 trainings that you've attended, what you have learned, and how you've applied what you've learned into your program, and how that knowledge has had a positive impact on your family child care home. So just some tips to help you with this. You can mention what the training was, what did you learn, what problems did you see in your program that could have been resolved, how did you apply what you learned from the program or from the training, and how did it turn out? Did it end up working? Did it not work? And again, just as with the quality standards report, we do enjoy listening and reading these. It kind of gets us a feel of what you providers are wanting to learn more about, and then that helps us decide to what things to pick at our conference. So we do use this information. We do enjoy reading them, so please take pride in these reports and write a good paragraph of what you've learned. Again, just another warning, if you only write 1 sentence, I will ask you to redo your report. Are there any questions in regards to the quality standards report or the professional development report? If you want to take a moment, I've copied an example here of a really good report, so you can take a second to read through that, or you can even just look at it and see kind of the size of text we're looking for each of those. So I'll just point out a couple things. Let me get my pen. So with the training, they mentioned the coursework and maybe where it was from, and then what they learned. And then with the quality improvement, they mentioned the number, where it came from, and what the actual standard was, and then how they're working on that. So you can see it's a pretty good chunk of writing. If that 1 page that we provide isn't enough, you're always welcome to add more pages. Okay, so if there are not any questions, we'll continue moving on. Now we're going to cover the additional documentation that you need to attach along with your update. You do not necessarily need to use this health form that we provide, that I'm going to be showing you on these next 2 slides. We just offer them to you to make it easier to know what to ask your doctor. You're allowed to go ahead and use a doctor form from your provider, from your doctor, but we do provide this on our website and with the update form if you choose to use it. Basically what we're looking for in the health assessment is making sure that your doctor clears you to work with children and that you are healthy enough to do so. Note that the health assessment is valid for 2 years. If you submit a health assessment that's older than 2 years, we will ask you to go visit your doctor and get the health assessment done again. We know that this can be hard as other states do it less or more. So just make sure that you are aware of that you have your health assessments and your exams planned for every 2 years or so, that you mark that in your calendar, because you do need to, for update purposes, you do have to have them every 2 years. And if it's older, we can't accept it. The same goes for your TB screening. It is valid for 2 years. There is an option on this form that if you go to your doctor and he happens to say, you know what, you just took a TB test not too long ago, and you're really in good standing, that your care professional can sign saying when your test was, and then put on the date that that you're in good standing, or if you had a positive test, they can mark you're now free of signs. Oh, here's what I was looking for. This patient is low risk for acquiring TB testing is not recommended at this time. So if he doesn't want to give you another TB test, this is an option that you can place. And then we'll just use the date that he wrote that you don't need the TB test. But if you can get the TB test, you should always get a TB test and make sure that it's negative. And then your provider will write the date that you have the test. And then, just like I mentioned, every 2 years you have to have that done. Karen is asking, New York State doesn't require this form. I'm guessing this is still required for NAFCC. Yes, NAFCC holds a higher standard than New York. You will have to make sure that you submit a health assessment and a TB screening for both the application and for update purposes. And for the update, it's every 2 years. So if you submit something that's older than 2 years, we can't accept it. If you submit something younger than 2 years, then you're perfect, and we can go ahead and take that. The next thing that you want to go ahead and attach to your update is your CPR and first aid. For NAFCC purposes, these also need to be redone every 2 years to make sure that when you submit certification, so when you submit it, just make sure that it's no older than 2 years. I know some places they make you redo it every year, so then that's easy. You'll never have to worry about redoing it because you're doing it every year, but there's some states that will do it for a little bit longer, but for most that I know, you have to, the certification only lasts 2 years, so just make sure you're getting that done every 2 years and that the card you submit isn't older than 2 years. And then also remember to submit your state and federal background checks. For NAFCC purposes, they must be done every 3 years. So make sure that when you submit those that they are no older than 3 years old. There's some states that do it every 1 year. There's some states that do it every 2 years. There's some states that do it every 5 years. So just make sure that when you submit for NAFCC purposes that they're done every 3 years. And a common question that I get, or a common submission that I get that we cannot accept is just the fingerprint page or like the fingerprint receipt. That does not count. We actually have to have the actual results that say this person has no delinquency, this person had no results come back from their FBI and state checks, something that very clearly states that there was or was not any results found. I know that some states, their licensing department keeps these, so you'll need to request from your licensing department that they send those to us, or if you can get a copy from them to send to us. Just make sure, like I mentioned, that those are completed every 3 years. So just a tip that I like to give providers, since the years and when you're supposed to submit everything gets confusing, it's 2 years for everything except the state and federal background checks. So background checks are 3 years, and then 2 years you have your health assessment, your TB screening, and your CPR first aid. This is really hard to write. Okay, so 2 years, health, TB, CPR first aid, 3 years, background checks. Hopefully that's just a little trick that helps you remember how often or how old we're allowed to accept those. Are there any questions about the health assessment, TB screening, CPR first aid, or state and federal background checks? Okay, I know that state background checks and federal background checks are what give a lot of providers pain in their heads and give them headaches. So if you do have questions about them, feel free to call us or to email us. Since every state is different, we try to keep track as best as we can, each state's requirements, and so we can help you out the best we can. Okay, Dana says right now in, I think that's Minnesota, we are waiting to get our background checks. So do I just need to do the federal now? So yes, you want to make sure that you have the state check and the federal check. I can't remember off the top of my head the rules for Minnesota. I would have to pull out my cheat sheet. I don't have it in front of me right now, but yes, make sure that you have both the state and the federal background checks. Henrina asked, can you request the background check? We can, but it's very difficult for us to do so because it's your personal information. And so when we call in They want to know your licensing number. They want to make sure that it's actually you, and because it's sensitive information, it's very hard for us to get copies of those. So if we see that it's not there, we'll almost always just ask you for it, because it's going to take us much longer to get that information than it's going to be for you to get that information. So please try your very best to get it, and then get it to us. If you do need help getting it, we can try to help you, but usually it takes us a lot longer to get it than you, because we have to go through a lot more loopholes than you do, or we have to try to contact more people on the phone, and that can take a really long time. So that's a great question. We'll try our very best if you can't get them to help you, but yeah, it's mainly your responsibility to get those to us. Tammy says, I thought checks automatically went to you. I don't ever remember having to send it in myself. There are many states where the background checks are automatically done with your licensing. So when your licensing is done every 2 or 3 years, that's when you get your background checks done as well. And so for a lot of states now, if your state doesn't do this now, there's a lot of states working on this. That when you submit your license, we can actually use your licensing date as your background check, because in order for you to even be licensed, you have to have state and federal background check clearance. So if you happen to be in that where you say, oh, it's, I don't think I've ever turned one in, it's because you might be in a state that your state and federal background checks are done with your licensing, and so we use your licensing date. Okay, Diane asks if certifications are sent, will expire before the reaccreditation. Do we need to have it update? I don't know if I understand your question. Let me reread it. Oh, okay, I think I understand your question. So certifications, if they're going to expire before the reaccreditation, don't worry so much about your reaccreditation. That's okay. We are just focused on your due date. So let me make an example. Let me get my pen. So if you're, just to make it easy, let's say your update is due tomorrow, October 31st. And let's say you have your health assessment, or let me put 2019, so we know the year. Let's say your health assessment doesn't expire till 2020. Your TB doesn't expire until, we'll say January 2020. Your TB doesn't expire until January 2020. Your CPR and first aid expire today, and your background checks don't expire until 2021. So because your CPR and first aid expired today and you submit it tomorrow, we're going to ask you to get us a new CPR and first aid. Your health assessment would be fine, your TB would be fine, and your background checks would be fine, even if your reaccreditation period was in 2021. We're just worried about it being older and not expiring before your update due date. But that would be good to note, though, and you would see that on your document checklist that we send to you after your update. It would be a reminder saying, hey, your health assessment and your TB screening are going to be expired in 2020. So in 2021, when you have your reaccreditation, just make sure that that you submit new ones, since they would have expired before that reaccreditation date. I think that was what you were asking, Diane. I hope I answered your question. And that's a really, really good question. So yes, just make sure that everything you submit will expire after your due date, not before your due date. If it's before the due date, then yes, we'll ask you to resubmit, but not necessarily your reaccreditation date. That's okay. But when reaccreditation date does come, if you weren't to have gotten these done and then you try to submit those, we'll say, hey, that expired in 2020. You need to go get those redone. Really good questions. Are there any other questions about those forms, those extra stuff that you need to submit along with your update? Okay, let's go ahead and talk about training. Submitting training for your update is not required. However, you will need a total of 90 hours for when you submit your reaccreditation application 3 years from the time you're accredited. Of those 90 hours, you must ensure that at least 45 of those 90 hours are from CEUs, college courses, or completed degrees. You must also have a mix of all the 7 core competencies. In the following slides, we will briefly cover the types of training we accept to total those 90 hours. Though it is not required, like I said, to submit training at the update, we do recommend that you use the update as a time to see how many training hours you have completed and to make a plan for how you will complete your final training hours before reaccreditation time arrives. Remember, you must ensure that all education and training, with degrees being the exception, is completed within 3 years prior to submitting your reaccreditation application, meaning they must be trainings that were completed after your last NAFCC application submission. So that just means what, I don't remember who it was now, someone had asked earlier in the webinar near the beginning which trainings they could submit. So let me get my pen. If you became accredited January 1st, let's say of 2018, and your accreditation, your reapplication is due 3 years from then, that would be 18 to 19, 2021. You can submit any training after this January 1st date up until your due date. Anything before that was used towards this application and this accreditation, so you can't use that. Any training after January 21st, 2018, sorry, January 1st, 2018, you can go ahead and use. And you want to make sure that those are 90 hours. So I like to tell providers, once you get to this halfway mark where your update is, go ahead and send us all the trainings you have so we can count them and let you know your standing. That way you know how much more you need to complete before your reaccreditation time. So if you submit it in and you happen to have 45 hours, well then you know you need another 45 hours before your reapplication time comes. Okay, so because training is not required, we'll only briefly cover this material, but if you have more questions about trainings that we don't cover tonight, please visit our training policy or watch our application webinar. That gives really in-depth details about training. For your 90 hours, we will count hours that are from trainings 2 hours or shorter, more than 2 hours, taught by you, an initial CDA, college courses, degrees, and continuing education units. What is important for you to know as a reaccrediting provider, if you will be becoming reaccredited, is that you need to have at least 45 of those 90 hours being CEUs, or continuing education units. Those can be acquired through college courses, degrees, and continuing education units. We'll cover each of those in detail in the following slides, but I just wanted to make it really clear, since this is one of the #1 questions that we have, is when people submit their hours, they're not sure if they're CEUs or not. So we'll go ahead and talk about that in the following slides. So a CEU, what that stands for is continuing education units. This means that the class is either accredited, taught by an accredited institution, or an accredited or certified individual. That is why college courses and degrees count as CEU hours. You can know if a training offers CEUs by checking the course description before taking it. CEU hours are exempt from the under 2-hour workshop limit of 28 hours, meaning that if you wanted to take 90 hours of just 1-hour CEU classes, you could totally do so. I have a question coming in. Renate says, I faxed my hours in to get them verified and I've not heard back. We have had a lot of hour submissions within the past 2 weeks since we sent out the letter clarifying what training hours are required. So please be patient. It might take a few days for us to get back to you since we have received a lot of email submissions, but we will get back to you, Renate, I promise. So where was I? So yes, CEUs, continuing education units, just meaning that the training that you're taking is from a qualified or accredited or certified person. So not just Susie down the road who happens to have had a program for a little while, wanted to teach a class about breastfeeding. she probably has some great information, and you can go ahead and count that as a regular training hour, but because she's not an accredited person, she wouldn't be able to offer you a continuing education unit, so you would have to go through an accredited institution to get a CEU. Okay, Leslie says, I have been taking training at the local college. I get CEUs as well as training hours each time I complete them. How does that count for NAFCC? Perfect, that's a great question, and that's our next slide. So when you take a college course, each semester course unit is worth 15 hours. So for example, Leslie, if you took a 3-unit class on, I don't know, infant development, you would receive 15 hours for each unit. So you would get 45 training hours for just that one 3-unit class, which is a really great way to get training hours with just in a few months if you can afford to take a class at your local college, or if your community college offers a college course, that's a great way to do it. If you take a quarter class, each 3-unit class is equivalent, or each unit class would be worth 10 hours. So if you took a 3-unit class, it would be 30 hours. If you're not sure if it's a semester or quarter class, you can ask your instructor, or you can check on your transcripts. But yes, you would want to submit a copy of your transcript in order for us to count those classes and to count those hours. And then if you're ever not sure the amount of hours that you're receiving for a class, if it doesn't specify clearly, or you're just not sure, you can always submit it to us, like Renate did, and we'll let you know. It just might take us a couple days to get to it to verify that for you, but we're happy to verify those hours for you to let you know, so you know how to plan. Claudia asked, what about English classes? We do not accept English as a class that you can take unless it would be like a class that you're helping children learn English, or helping children learn how to write in English, or if it happened to be, if English was your second language and you were learning that for your professional development, then yeah, we would be able to make those exceptions and count an English class. But you might have to, if we were to submit that English class and we didn't count it, you might want to let us know, like, hey, I took that as part of my professional development because I'm working on my English, then yeah, we would be able to count that course for you. Just make that clear, because normally if we see an English class, we won't count it. But if that happens to be your second language, or if it's teaching children English, then yeah, we would totally count that. That's a good question, thank you. And then I just want to go back for a second with the CEUs. When you go onto a website, there are a lot of websites that offer CEUs. In the course description, you'll just want to click on it and check and make sure that it does say CEU, or it says continuing education unit. That way you can count it. And then another thing that a lot of providers get confused, because it's a continuing education unit, they like to write them a little bit differently. So because it's a unit, they'll normally write it in this fashion, like 0.01, that will equal 1 hour. So they're just transferring their term unit into hour. So if you have 0.01 on your form, that would equal 1 hour. If they say you have 1 unit, then that would equal actually 10 hours. So if you get confused by that, what is really helpful in most of your documents, it will actually say you received 0.01 continuing education units or 1 training hour. They'll usually almost always clarify the CEU versus the hour you're receiving, which is really nice. But if you're ever confused, if it just says like 0.01 or 1 or 2 or 3 and you're not sure, you can always submit them to us and we'll clarify what it means, since that switching units to hours sometimes gets confusing. Just because college and institutions that are accredited like to make things confusing, right? And NAFCC, we sometimes do that too. So yep, that's just what that means. Okay, so are there any questions versus CEUs or college courses? If not, let's go ahead. Oh, Renate says, who is able to provide CEUs? Like I mentioned, they have to be accredited institutions or accredited or certified individuals. So it's someone who probably has a degree or someone who has taken an official training course to be a trainer. If you're ever unsure, you can always ask the person who's teaching, like, hey, is this class, are you an accredited or certified trainer? Will I be receiving continuing education units for this class? On our NAFCC training website, we do have quite a few links, I think about 7 or 10 links that are pages just full of CEU pages. So if anyone's interested, at the end of the webinar, I can just show you quickly how to find that list. That way you can click through all of those, and they're actually not too expensive. Most of them are about $10 per CEU, or sometimes I've seen some of the pages are even free. Yes, Renate, most of them will cost you money, and the reason they do cost a little bit more than regular training classes is because it is a trained, certified, or accredited person teaching the class. So yes, CEUs are sometimes, most of the time, more costly. So that's another reason why you want to go ahead and plan out how you're going to get those 45 CEU hours during your accreditation period. That way you're not a month away from reaccreditation and you look at your page and say, oh my gosh, I need 40 CEU hours, and then you have to go throw away $400 in that week to try to get all those training done. So yeah, make sure that you're planning out your 3 years well with your trainings and spacing things out, so financially you're not hurting yourself, and then also so you're getting all the trainings that you need. Okay, so for reaccrediting providers, if you want to submit a degree that you have earned for training hours, you're more than welcome to do so, and we love to receive degrees. So if you have the associates related degree, we'll accept that for 22.5 CEU hours. If you have a bachelor's related, 3.15 hours, master's 40.5 hours. If you have a bachelor's unrelated, meaning it's something that's not early child care education related, so like if you have a bachelor's in accounting or something, we'll still count those. We'll just count it for 13.5 hours, since that is a lot of professional development that you've done. And then just for us to be able to count it, you'll want to submit a copy of your transcript or a copy of your degree so that we can count those hours for you. And then how we calculate these hours is just based off of a percentage. So I think, yeah, a master's, that's 45% of your training requirement. The bachelor's is 35% of what your training requirement would be. Associates is 25%, and then the bachelor's is 15%. So that's how we came up with those hours amounts. Tammy Tucker asked, does it matter the year was completed? No, so this is the only exception to the 3-year rule. Everything, including college courses, including CEUs, must be done in the 3-year span except for degrees. We will always count your degree with every accreditation application you submitted, because that was a lot of effort, a lot of work that you put in to get those degrees. So we'll always count those, whether it's in 1995 that you got it or 2019, we'll accept those. Let me erase my drawings. Okay, and then just as a quick reminder, as reaccrediting providers, you want to make sure that your training hours include each of these 7 competencies, which are relationships, interactions, and guidance, child growth and development, learning environments and curriculum, health, safety, nutrition, assessment and screening, special needs and inclusion, professional business practices. This requirement ensures that all accredited providers have a good balance in what they choose to study for their 90 hours. This is not hard to meet. As you're studying for 90 hours, you're going to get a good mix of these anyway, so I wouldn't stress out too much about this. Just make sure that you're like not only taking child growth classes, you're not only taking 90 hours of pure nutrition. It's just, we just want to make sure that you have a good mix of what you're studying, that you're a well-rounded provider. So with the update form, when you submit your trainings, you will record them on a training sheet that looks like this. You'll want to order them by date and include the number of hours you received below the appropriate column. Then you will attach all your certificates or transcripts that you list on your training record. If you do not submit a certificate or a transcript as proof, we unfortunately cannot count your hours. We don't get a lot of providers that do this. Most of you are very honest when you submit these in, but if you put in a training and you don't provide a certificate, we can't prove that you actually took that course, and you might just be writing it down hoping to sneak in another 5 hours or so. So you always have to attach a certificate or a transcript to prove that you actually took that course. Additionally, if you do not submit a training record with your application, we may ask you to do so, and your application review process may be delayed. We usually try to be lenient on this, especially if you're sending in like a buttload of certificates. We'll just count the certificates, and that's the most important part anyway. But this is a good way for you to be organized as well and to see what you have. And then it's also a great way for us to just double check and make sure that we're counting the same hours that you are yourself are counting. Claudia asks if I can show the last page again. Sure. So if you want to take a picture of this or write them down really fast, I'll keep this open while I answer questions. Diane asks, I have taken several NAFCC webinar trainings, Tom Copeland, and did not request CEU hours. Can I recover them? Yes. I am not in charge of the Tom Copeland webinars. Nicole Hopkins is in charge of that. I can, you can find her information on our website, or I can find her phone number, her extension for you. So if you want to call her, she can help you get those CEU hours paid for, so you can count those as CEUs. But most of the time when we see a Tom Copeland webinar, or if we see an NAFCC webinar and we know that it was CEU approved, we'll usually count it for you. But yeah, just make sure that if you do take courses that do offer CEUs, that you do get those paid for if there is a cost associated with them, so then you get the certificate that says CEU hours. Because if it just says regular training hours, we'll only count them as regular training hours. I hope that answers your question. Marcela Espinosa asks, how do I send in Navy training if they don't give certification? Okay, Navy is a little bit different. Navy, Army, and Air Force, they'll give you a transcript. And so that transcript is all you need to send us. You'll send us that transcript because they will have on that transcript every course you took with them and with the hours that they completed there. The only tricky thing with the Navy, the Army, and the Air Force is that most of the classes that they offer are not CEUs. So just to make sure that when you take those trainings, that I know you're taking a ton of them, make sure that you're also taking CEU trainings as well. We do have a little bit of leeway if you happen to do over 120 training hours. We'll usually accept that in place of CEUs for providers that are in the Navy and in the Army, Navy, and Air Force, because the trainings you do are so intensive and you do so many of them. But just make sure that you're also taking CEUs outside of there. That way you don't get stressed out if we give you a notice back saying, hey, you had a bunch of hours, but none of them were CEUs. Oh, Claudia, sorry, the one before this one you needed. This one? Let me know if not. Okay, Catherine asks, can you submit your PDR for proof of training? Yes, you can submit any professional development registry from any state, and that will count. Just mention it in your registry in the NAFCC Accreditation Training Record that you're attaching that. Say, just put PDR or Professional Development Report, and then attach that report. Those are actually, we love those because it makes it really easy for us to read all of the training hours that you've done. But for any other, if you don't take your trainings from a registry, any other classes or any classes you take outside our registry, make sure you have the certificates, or else we cannot count them. We will count, let me see if I can summarize this. We will count it, your hours, if they come from a transcript, and it's very easy to read the date that you took the class and the amount of hours you received. We'll accept your training if it comes from a professional development registry, because it shows the date and very clearly how many hours you received. and will receive certificates, because certificates also mention very clearly the date and number of hours received. Okay, got lots of questions coming in. This is great. Renate asks, does the open initiative proof of training count? We don't get any certificates anymore. I don't know if I'm not super familiar with the open initiative training. If there isn't a certificate provided, if you can give me a letter written by the trainer or the organization who did that training, stating the date that you received it, and or the date that you did the training and the amount of hours received, we can count it. So yeah, that's another way you can submit trainings, is if for some reason you didn't get a certificate or anything, if you can get someone, the trainer or the organization that did do the training, to sign a form for you saying and proving that you were there, saying, hey, this person, I taught this person this day and they received this many hours, we'll count that. So just make sure you have some sort of proof that you were there. We can't accept receipts for training. So like, let's say you did pay for a Tom Copeland webinar or something like that. We can't accept just receipt because we don't know if you actually attended the webinar. You maybe paid for it, but then never went. So you always have to have the certificate saying the date and the hours you received. Okay, Leslie asks, some trainings with the Air Force repeat each year, such as child abuse and USDA training. How do those hours count? We won't count repeat classes. We look out for those. So no, we won't count repeat classes, but if you take a repeat class in a new accreditation period, yeah, we'll count those again. But yeah, if you take USDA training every year, no, we'll usually only count it the one time. Leslie, yes, also medication administration training. Yeah, some of those things you just do every year. We can't always count them for every year. It kind of depends too. If it's like a different instructor, or if they teach different elements in there, if it's not titled exactly the same because they taught different things, then we'll count it again. But if it's the same exact course, then no, we can't accept it twice, just the one time. Cynthia asked, what about online webinars? Yes, as long as you receive a certificate or an email proving that you were in attendance and that you received such and such hours on such and such date, yes, we accept online webinars for training. Alrighty, I hope I got everybody's question. There was a lot that came in. If I missed your question, please let me know, write your question again and say, hey, you missed me. But I think I got them all. Were there any other slides you needed, Claudia? Or can I go back to the one we were at? Okay, I'm going to skip forward again. If you need anything at the end, let me know. So yes, let me just give you a quick example of this. So let's say, using some of the examples you mentioned to me, so let's say you have a professional development report or registry. You can put that there, and then you'll say, I got like 14 of those were less than 2 hours, and then 5 of them were more than 2 hours, and then I went to the community college, and I did some college courses. I took a 3-unit class, so that's another 45 hours, and then I took a breastfeeding class, that was 1 hour. I took a Stop Spanking Your Baby class, that was another 1 hour, and I took, I don't know, a nutrition class, that was 3 hours. Over here, 3 hours. So that would kind of be how you would fill this out, and then you would make sure that all of these certificates or transcripts are attached behind this training record. Oh, and then you would put the presenter name here, whoever presented it, or the organization, and then you would put your total down here, and then hopefully by the end of it, I don't know, I'm not going to count it, 30. When you have your hours here, we'll count the same amount of hours based off the certificates you attached. Are there any questions on how to fill this out? Here's a prettier example. So you can see there's an example of a degree, college courses, and then each of the classes. So with this person would have to submit certificates or degrees for every single one of these. So that way we can prove that they actually did this and they're not just writing down a class name that they made up. And then they have 120 hours. Okay, so now that we've gone through the update, let's review to make sure that we've checked all of our boxes. Okay, so we did the update form. Yes, we covered all of that in detail. We talked about update fees and how to pay for that. So just a quick review, you can call us to pay for that. You can give us your credit card information on page 3. You'll give us agency information if an agency is paying for you, or you can send us a check to our office. Eligibility documentation, we did talk about that. We talked about the health assessment and TB screening, CPR first aid being every 2 years, no older than 2 years old when you submit those, and then your background checks every 3 years. At the beginning, we talked about licensing reports and complaints to make sure that you submit those, or if you didn't have them, to at least submit your child care license. That way we can find your state registry easily and confirm that you didn't have any complaints or any bad reports. We talked about the quality improvement report and the professional development report, making sure that those are specific, writing a good paragraph, taking pride in what you've learned and accomplished. And then we've just finished covering training, making sure that you are prepared for submitting your 90 hours at reaccreditation, that you don't need to submit training for the update, but that's a good idea to do so. That way we can let you know where you're standing to make sure that you are on track for that 90 hours for reaccreditation. Alrighty, so now that you can see that all of these are checked, you are ready to submit your update. So these are the ways that you can submit your update. You can mail it to our address, which is in Salt Lake City, Utah. You can scan it to us, email it at accreditation@nafcc.org, or you can fax it to us at our fax number. When you're scanning or when you're submitting emails, please, please, please try your very best to submit PDFs or even Word documents. If you submit images, we do, for most of the time, we'll receive them. But the only problem with images is sometimes providers will like take a picture of something with their phone and then it comes back to us blurry, or sometimes we can't open the type of image you've given us. So just make sure that if you do submit an image, have it be a JPEG or something that's very easy for us to open and that the picture is very clear. We can read the amount of hours, or that we can read very clearly what it is that you're sending to us. So that's why we highly recommend that you submit PDFs, because those are clear and we can always open those. Any questions about submissions or how to submit? If you happen to be working with someone specifically here in the office, you can also submit it directly to them at their specific email. But if you aren't, you can just always submit it to accreditation@nafcc.org and it will eventually, that same day, make it to one of us to start reviewing. Okay, processing time for your update. Once you've submitted your update, it will take 3 to 5 weeks for us to complete it if it is complete at the time of submission. To be honest, we are going a little bit faster than that. It's taking us between 3 to 4 weeks right now. If there is anything that is needed, we will email you. So once you've submitted your update, just make sure that you're checking your email regularly, because that will be our first point of contact with you if you're missing anything. We don't have enough time in our short days to call every single person who's missing something, so that's why we'll always email you first. If after a couple weeks you haven't emailed us back or called us about your update, then we'll probably call you saying, hey, did you get our email? You're missing some things. So always be checking your email after you've submitted your update, just to make sure that nothing's missing. Once your update has been reviewed and is complete, we'll send you a letter that looks like this, along with a seal that you will place on your accreditation certificate. This is a sample letter for a complete second-year annual update. You can see that it'll say congratulations to whoever it is for, and then you completed your second annual update. Here's your seal, and then it'll tell you where to place it on your certificate. Now, I do get a lot of questions about where to put it on their certificate, so I'm going to go over that in the next slide. Catherine is asking for the fax number. Let me go back just a second so she can get that. This is our fax number here at the bottom, 801-886-2325. So if you all want to take a picture of that or write it down quickly, fax gets to us really fast. Email gets to us really fast. Mail usually takes a couple days to get to us, and then it takes another 2 or 3 days for us to process it. So if you want it done quickly, scanning and faxing is the best way. You're welcome, Catherine. Oh, did you get it? Can I go ahead and move forward? Okay. If you need anything else, we can mention it at the end or go back to any slides that anybody needs. So once you get your seal, you're going to place it on your certificate. Now, there's a lot of text on the certificate, and many providers get confused, which is totally okay because I got confused the first time I saw one of these too. So I just want to briefly go through this. So if you were accredited before 2018, this is what your certificate will look like, because you will have to have done a first update and a second update. So you'll have 2 seals that you need on your certificate. The blue arrows indicate when your update is due and where you will place your seal. The orange arrow indicates how long your accreditation certificate is valid for with its corresponding seals. So for example, in the middle, let me get my pen. In the middle, you will see that this certificate is valid through September 1st, 2020. To make it valid for another year, you would, this person, Alicia, she would need to submit her first update 1 year from that mark. So here we go, update due 8/1/2020. So then it could become valid for another year until 2021. In order to have it valid for a second year, she would need to submit her second update. So here it says her second update is due 8/1/2021. And then once that seal is there, that makes it valid through August 1st, 2022. So it gets a little confusing because there's lots of little text marks, but we've tried to make it as clear as possible so that the whole certificate is valid through 2020. If you want it to be older than that, then that's when you need to submit your update. So you get the seal to make it valid for another year. If you want it to be valid for the next year, you got to do the update to get the seal to make it valid for another year. So this is an example for someone accredited before 2018. For someone, and which for most of you, this is what your certificate will look like for accrediting and reaccrediting after 2018. So this will be a little bit easier since there's only 1 seal involved. So the blue arrow shows where to place your seal, and the orange arrow shows how long the accreditation is valid for. So the first orange arrow shows that the certificate is valid until March 1st, 2020. Let me get my pen again. So this one right here, upon award, this certificate is valid through 2021. So if Alicia wants to maintain her accreditation, she'll need to submit her update by then. So then where the second orange arrow is, her accreditation would then be valid until August 1st, 2022. And then this is where she would place her seal. Are there any questions about the certificates, where to place your seals, where to see the due dates, any of that? Okay, great. We hope that it's pretty self-explanatory. It's just sometimes it's a little jumbled around and hard to find. So I wanted to take a moment just to explain that. So that is all the information I have for you tonight. So I just want to take a moment to see if there are any lingering questions about anything we've talked about tonight, to take a moment to talk about those now. Any questions about when to submit the update, when your due date is, any questions about documents you need to submit in, any questions about filling out the actual form, how to submit. Alrighty, well, here I have information for you. This is our accreditation team. If you have any specific questions and would like to get in contact with one of us specifically, this is all of our information. Alicia Platt is our Accreditation Operation Manager, And then Fernanda and Maria work along with me, Marissa, as program coordinators. We take care of the applications, the updates, present webinars, do everything that we can to help, observations. We do everything that we can to help you make your accreditation process as smooth as possible. So if you have any questions, you can feel free to call us or email us with this information that we've provided. And then if you need extra support and help, you can visit our Facebook pages. We have the NAFCC Accreditation Candidates in Process page for those who are working on their accreditation for the first time or who are in their self-study process. We have the NAFCC Accredited Providers page for those who are accredited and have accreditation. NAFCC Observers, if you're an observer or want to become an observer, want to learn more about that. And then the Accreditation Facilitation Projects page is for those who are mentors and like to, who have a group or an organization that they help and want some extra like training tips. Oh, good, Susan. Susan says that she appreciates Alicia and I doing the webinars. It makes the process less intimidating. That was the goal with these, so I'm glad that you really like them. Thank you for letting us know. And then, of course, if you have any feedback or extra questions for us, how we can make these webinars better, what you like, what you don't like, please email Alicia or I, and we would be happy to take your advice into account. This is actually the last webinar for the accreditation series. If you started with us about 2 months ago, we started a new webinar series, and this is the last one of the series. So if you have been with us since the beginning, congratulations, you've completed the last one, and we'll be doing our rotation again starting in a couple weeks. And then, yeah, just let us know how you're liking it, if you're not liking it, what we can do to improve, what you like. And again, thank you so much for attending. I'll just stick around another minute to see if there's any lingering questions. Otherwise, have a great night. Have a safe Halloween tomorrow, and have fun with your kiddos, whether they're your own children or the children in your program. Hope you have lots of fun activities planned for tomorrow. Tammy says, I missed the first couple of minutes. Will there be a certificate? Yes, great question. So tomorrow afternoon, you will receive an email confirmation that you've attended this webinar. It will say the name of the webinar, the amount of hours received, and everything, so you can use that to submit back to NAFCC to receive training hours for that, and to keep in your portfolio. If you do need a specific certificate, we can make that for you if you need it for your state or for other registries. We're working on a way to get the certificates automatically sent out to you, and so I think we figured out how to do that. So hopefully you'll have the certificate automatically attached to that email as well, so you'll have it. But if for some reason it doesn't go through, just email me if you need a written out certificate with my signature and everything, and I will get that to you. Renate says, thank you very much. Keep the webinars coming. We will. Thank you. I'm glad that you're enjoying them. I'm working on another one that's separate from our accreditation series about marketing your programs. So if you have any ideas for me or any suggestions or things that you would like to have in that webinar, let me know. But that's the one I'm currently working on. But yes, we have about 6 or 7 webinars right now that we're presenting, usually every week or every other week. So yeah, please stay in tune, check our accredited webinar page to find those if you're interested in liking those. Diane, yes, I can give you Nicole's number. Let me grab there's my form where I have all the extensions. Here, you know what? This is what I'm going to do. I'm going to come out here and I'll show you, just because I can't find it on my desk right now. Oh no, here's my Chrome. Here we go. And then just so everyone knows, if you need to ever contact us, if you come to our website and click Contact Us, here's Nicole. This is her extension. Our phone number is the same for everybody, 801-886-2322. Our extensions will just be different. And then Renate, standard related webinars. Yes, we do have a standard related webinar. I can actually show you here on the website for those who don't know how to find our webinars. Let me know, Diane, if you need me to come back to this page. If you go to the accreditation tab and then hover down to this third one down, you'll get these two options come up. The last one is accreditation webinars. This will have all of our webinars for the rest of the year, and then we'll update it with the new webinars for next year, beginning of next year. But if you scroll all the way down to the bottom, Renate, there is a standards webinar that we present every month, the most missed standards during the observation visit. This is our number, I guess this is, what's the word I want to say? This is our most attended webinar out of all of the webinars that we've created. This one's a really big hit. I usually have about 80 people registered and attending for each of those. So that's a really good one if you want to learn more about the standards. Alrighty, if there aren't any other questions, I'm going to go ahead and close the webinar for tonight. Again, thank you for attending and for supporting family child care. We really enjoy working with you and helping you with your accreditation. So if you need anything, again, come to this page. You can find our schedules and our phone numbers, and we would be happy to help you. Thank you and have a great night and have a great Halloween.